If you're in a big city, it's time to get out. I mean, obviously, we're way past that time. Those cities are clearly being taken. If you're not going to fight for it, if you are not going to fight, you must leave or you will be taken. This is coming. This is the nature of these sorts of takeovers, right? The economy clearly is collapsing. And the Strait of Hormuz is not even closed yet, right? And we saw the Japanese economy take a crash into a mountain on Monday, as did quite a few others. The bottom line is there's a lot of context going on here, and not a lot of it's positive. And so whether it's economic collapse or these invasions that are going on, you're going to have to fight or flee. If you freeze, you'll probably die, or you'll certainly be a slave. And so what are you going to do? That depends on your personal situation. Certainly you need to organize around groups. It's very important that you organize with quality people. And cowards are natural traitors. Never let cowards into your inner circles. They are natural Dr. Smith, Lost in Space type characters. And this is old knowledge. This isn't me coming up with this, although I've seen it a lot. This is old knowledge that goes back since the oldest books I can read. Cowards are those close to you that become afraid. They'll sell you out, and that's it. So it's very important to be brutal in your estimates and who you let within your inner circles, right? And it's very important that you take significant action. Storing up 3 months of food, what's that going to do? Get you through a blackout if nobody comes and kills you and takes your food. But this is not a 3-month problem. I mean, the famines, which are clearly coming, which I've talked about this in detail for years and studied it in detail. 3 months ain't going to do it. We have a systemic change unfolding. Nord Stream cut, Groningen cut. What could happen now? All these different things, fertilizer plants burning down, H5N1, chicken culling, food processing burning down, Japanese farmers going out of business, farmers being bought out in the UK and Australia and the United States and Canada and here as well. And so the strategic food supply capacity is going down intentionally. The globalists are turning out the lights because the depopulation is clearly coming, right? Clearly coming. So you have to realize that although all of our ancestors have been through many wars, everybody watching this, all of our ancestors have been in a lot of wars, a lot of pandemic and a lot of famine. All of us, we are, I mean, that's the tree we came from. It's our turn now. And so you have to change the way your brain thinks. If you're doing any alcohol, if you're doing any drug, you should stop right now. I mean, stop, get rid of that crap and start paying attention. Get your mind clear, get fit and start paying very close attention and start paying attention to what is within your means. What actions can you do to ensure that and try to make as few moves as possible. In other words, you don't want to move to Virginia only to have to move somewhere else. But that's the thing you need to do is think it through. Everybody has different capacities. Like if you're Armenian, you might want to move back to Armenia. If you're Georgian, you might want to move back to Georgia. I was just over in Armenia and Georgia last year. Fine places except for Azerbaijan will want to take a slice out of Armenia. But the bottom line is different people have different abilities. Thai people might want to go back to Thailand. Japanese, I don't know if you want to come back here. Because although it's much nicer than the United States now, Japan is easily put into famine. 95% of the petroleum products are brought in. Most of the food is imported. This place can easily be tipped to famine. And Japan has experienced many, many famines. And Masako Ganaha, research partner of mine, she found mention of, I think, 503 famines in about the last 1,500 years because we've been studying famine in Japan and, different things. But the bottom line is, try to make a one-stop shopping. And it can depend. If you're from Guatemala, you might want to go back to Guatemala because I think Guatemala I was in Guatemala, this year or last year? That's a nice place. That's a place I would go on vacation. El Salvador too. There's a lot of places that you can go back to that are not going to be in the middle of a kinetic war. Because if you're in the United States, everything goes. If we get into a nuclear war, the United States is going to get nuked, right? I don't know that Guatemala would. I don't know what the radiation patterns would be and that sort of thing. But if the lights go out in the United States, all somebody has to do is turn our lights out. If our let me say something, just a couple more minutes. Maybe 2 months ago, the Chinese have invested heavily in the Ecuadorian power grid. I told Matt this the other night. They have invested heavily in the Ecuadorian power grid. Now, Quito, Ecuador is where most of the Chinese land who are coming through the Darien Gap through Colombia and Panama. and they arrive visa free. They'll leave China. Often they'll go to Chiang Mai, to Turkey, down to Quito, right? So they've been arriving they can get visa on arrival. But the Chinese are causing problems in Ecuador. But remember what I said, China is a major investor in their electrical system. So about 2 months ago, and you can find this in the news, Ecuador said, okay, Chinese have to get a visa in advance. So the Chinese government said, well, I don't know what they said, but they were not happy with it. I remember that part. But the electricity went out for the entire country the next day. So the entire Ecuador was in a blackout. So they said, you need to get visa before you show up. And they had a blackout. Whole country. Now imagine the United States. I don't know who all can turn our grid off. Maybe China. I think we've bought a lot of transformers from them and that sort of thing. Maybe they got a little switch they can flip. Russians are highly capable. We've got all sorts of highly capable enemies and other globalists who will be Americans, can easily
exactly people in our own government.
And the main invasion engine for the United States is our government, straight up. And so if our electricity goes out, we're going into famine almost instantly. I mean, it'll start very quickly. I mean, because that's it. I mean, if our electricity is out for 3 months, you're going to see a dramatic population reduction, right? And if it's out for 6 months or a year, I mean, it's road warrior stuff. So yeah. And so what can you do? You have to assess your own situation. Certainly you do need plenty of food and that sort of thing on hand, and your ability to defend yourself and your ability to defend yourself where you're at, but also depending where you're at, because everybody's situation is different. But certainly the life that you had before is over. And so you will either adjust to it and there's a high chance you'll do well, or you won't adjust to it and there's a high chance you're going to die.